you still cover them being a columnist, but you were really with them as a beat writer for years and years. So how did this news about the Pohlads strike you? Everyone was wanting it to happen, fans-wise, but now that it's here, are you surprised?
Not really. I mean, listen, yes, you're always surprised when big news breaks, right? But then you think about it and you go, okay, it makes sense. I mean, Joe Pohlad, young guy, came in, and the way he always talked, it sounded like he thought, hey, I'm going to push this team over the edge. We're going to win a World Series. Didn't happen. All of a sudden, he becomes the whipping boy. The Pohlad name keeps getting dragged through the mud. You know, my conversations with people around the Pohlads is, it's easy to call them, you know, Carl was a billionaire. He's a single billionaire. He's one of the richest people in the world. And he didn't care what public thought of it. Joe, young guy, not a billionaire, being held responsible for everything that goes wrong with the team, I'm guessing that wasn't a whole lot of fun. Jim Pohlad walked away, retired, washed his hands of all this. Bob Pohlad never really wanted to be front and center, and so there's no Carl figure in this group. You say, I'm the owner, I'll do what I want, I don't care what you think. I think Joe cared what people thought of him, and all he heard was negative stuff.
And that's a different ball game, no pun intended, now than it was when it started.
Yeah, well, it's changed many times. And there have been so many phases, really. Carl takes over, wins 2 World Series before he even knows how to run a baseball team, because he just happened to hire good people and let them work. Then in the 90s, he went from being the only person who's ever won a championship here to being the guy who wanted contraction, stripped the payroll, didn't try to win at all. He was a horrible owner for a long time after being apparently a good owner for a while. He almost screwed up their chances of getting a new stadium. Finally, he got out of the new stadium picture, let Dave St. Peter and Jerry Bell take over. They get the new stadium. They have a really good decade. And, Jim steps in, and Jim wasn't the most talkative guy, but he seemed to be, people who worked for him liked him. Joe's a different thing. And the other thing I kept hearing around from people around the Pohlads recently was, okay, it's easy to call the family billionaires, but they have a lot of their money tied up in commercial real estate and in other businesses. It's not like they have $1 billion sitting in a bank. They're worth, as a family, $1 billion, and they don't think they can afford to lose $50, $100 million a year on a baseball team. So that probably made this decision pretty easy.
When you look back to the history of it, yes, you just point out some things like contraction that we all remember, but you tend to gloss over when you look at the history of, 40 years that they've owned this team. They're beloved still in this town, don't you think?
No, I really think the Pohlad name has become synonymous with cheapness, whether that's fair or not. It's the loudest voices get heard. The loudest voices hate the Pohlads and blame everything that goes wrong with the Twins on the Pohlads. There's some truth in that. They could spend more money. As somebody who's covered baseball for 30 years, I don't know, a long time now, I just think that's too simplistic. You can spend a lot of money in free agency and lose. You can put together a great farm system team and win. If it was just money, the Dodgers would have won more than one World Series in the last 40 years, and the Yankees would have won more than one World Series in the last 24 years. Money can help you be competitive. It is not as simple as spend more money, you will win all the time.
No, but when you're a middle market, sometimes it's petty enough to be competitive, right? And not to win. You see, like the Red Sox, when the Yankees sold it off, and then there was they got a partnership group, and they put more money into the team, not as much as the Yankees, and they ended up breaking the curse. Like, that's just one example.
Right. There are teams, last year, the Texas Rangers and the Arizona Diamondbacks in the World Series, they were not to the highest paid franchises. The Rangers spent some money in free agency, but it's just what I'm glad that the Pohlads are selling, because I'm sick of the conversation. I'm sick of the dumbed down conversation. Oh, Royce Lewis had a bad month. Pohlad should have spent more money. Oh, Brock Stewart got hurt. Pohlad should have spent more money. It's become the answer to every problem. Again, there's truth in it, but it's not the only truth.
So do you see this to be, depending on who the buyer is?
It really depends. You answered the question. It depends on the buyer. People who buy sports franchises tend to be billionaire egomaniacs. That can go a lot of different ways, right? And even the same billionaire can have good runs and bad runs. Carl had a great run and a terrible run, and then a better run. Glenn Taylor almost ran the Timberwolves. He saved the team, and then he ran it and turned it into one of the worst franchises in the history of sports. And here he is, and he has one of the best franchises in the history of sport. I mean, in recent Minnesota history. So it can even change within the same owner's tenure. I have no idea. All I know is that the new owner is going to get a honeymoon that the Pohlads aren't getting right now.
All right, what is your most positive thing that the Pohlads have done for the Twins, and maybe the most negative after that?
The most positive was that Carl came in, bought the team, and hired Andy MacPhail and let him run the show and didn't get in his way. So they ended up with Andy MacPhail hiring Tom Kelly. Andy and Tom win 2 World Series in 5 years. That's obviously the franchise highlight. It's the franchise, other than the Lynx, it's the highlight of Minnesota sports, period. The worst is Carl operated very cynically. He lied about things. He put the team up for contraction, which, whether it was true that he's willing to kill the team or whether he did it just to get a new stadium, very cynical move. He offered a loan. He offered a cash figure to help build a new stadium. It turned out to be a loan. He really double dealt a lot, and it really damaged the Pohlad name. And I think the Pohlads are still dealing with the repercussions of Carl working that way.
What's the best?
The best is the World Series champions. And the other thing, and more modern, they got Target Field built. And that's another Pohlad tale. Carl, because of his double dealing and his double speak, he was killing their chances of getting a new stadium. Once he stepped away, let Jerry Bell run it, let Dave St. Peter contribute, and those guys started working with the legislature and leaving Carl out of the picture, that's how they got Target Field built, and Target Field is fantastic.
Now, as a guy that's been around him a lot, when you see the breadcrumbs of, getting rid of Sad Levine and then making sure their radio contract was shored up, does that happen anyway, or were they getting their ducks in a row?
I don't think Thad's move had anything to do with the Pohlads. Thad came in as 1B to Falvey's 1A, and the longer he stayed here, the smaller his role got. And I think he has too much pride to just take a paycheck to have a title. I think he wants to be more involved with whatever he's involved in. The local media revenues are a big part of this story. 2 years ago when they were making $54 million from the local media, they were willing to pump up the payroll. Now that those numbers have dwindled by a large amount, that's where they really don't want to be the scapegoats and lose money and not really necessarily have a better financial future on the horizon.
What are your final thoughts on this whole thing?
I just think the Pohlads have a very complicated legacy here. Carl did great things and terrible things in this market. I thought Jim Pohlad was a responsible owner, if not the person who's going to spend as much as they wanted him to. And I think Joe was a little naive, stepped in thinking, hey, if I just make some good decisions here, Twins are going to win a World Series, and it's just not that easy.